We often imagine war as something that happens far away, between nations, across battlefields, in the pages of history. But Machiavelli understood that the first and fiercest battles are fought within. His book, The Art of War, was not merely about moving armies on a map. It was about shaping the mind of the commander, because no victory can be claimed without first mastering the self. In your life, the enemies are subtle, the hesitation before an opportunity, the quiet corrosion of doubt, the seductive call of comfort when discipline is required. These forces do not march in formation. They slip through your thoughts. They weaken your will. And just as Machiavelli advised the training of soldiers in times of peace, he would urge you to prepare your mind before the moment of trial. This is not a call to aggression. It is a call to awareness, to see clearly the terrain of your own habits and fears, to understand that fortune bends toward those who are ready for its shifts. In the battles ahead, your weapon will not be the sword, but the clarity to act when others hesitate, and the resilience to endure when others retreat. The mind is a labyrinth. Let's walk its shadows together. Machiavelli knew that no general could win a war without first knowing the ground upon which it would be fought. He spoke of rivers that could flood, mountains that could shelter, and roads that could betray those who walked them unprepared. But the modern terrain is not soil and stone. It is the shifting, uncharted country of the mind. The truth is that most people enter their days like untrained conscripts, stumbling into battles they didn't anticipate. They have no map of their inner territory. They do not know where the marshes of fear will slow them, where the cliffs of anger will drop them into rash decisions, or where the forests of distraction will lead them astray. And so they are taken by surprise, again and again, not because life is unusually cruel, but because they have never learned to scout the enemy within. To Machiavelli, reconnaissance was not optional. It was the lifeblood of strategy. You cannot win a war you do not understand. Likewise, you cannot master your days if you do not first master your awareness. Begin with observation, not judgment, not blame. Watch your patterns as a strategist studies an opposing army. Where do you retreat when pressed? What triggers make you lash out? What small, repeated lapses in discipline cost you the larger victories you claim to want? This is the terrain upon which your future will be decided. Machiavelli advised that a commander must train his soldiers in the very conditions they will one day face. You can do the same for your mind. If procrastination is your ambush, then face it deliberately. Set a smaller, immediate task and complete it under self-imposed time pressure. If self-doubt is your storm, then walk into situations that test your competence until repetition wears down fear. The point is not to avoid discomfort, but to move through it so often that it ceases to dictate your choices. Your enemies are not imaginary. They are the fatigue that convinces you to delay the essential, the resentment that poisons your interactions before words are spoken, the quiet cynicism that makes you dismiss an opportunity before you have examined it. Each of these must be treated as a hostile force, because that is exactly what they are. They will advance if left unchecked. And here lies the paradox Machiavelli would understand. Strength begins in stillness. A good general does not simply charge forward. He pauses to read the signs, to let the dust of the enemy's movement reveal their path. You too must create moments in which to stand back from yourself, not to hesitate, but to see. Make no mistake, this battlefield is not a metaphor for some distant challenge. It is where you stand right now. Every hesitation is a skirmish. Every decision, a maneuver. When was one time a single choice shifted your whole path? Your story might be the spark for someone else's next move. Share your insights in the comments. Every hour wasted is ground lost to an opponent who never sleeps. And while fortune may play her games, It is the prepared who turn her whims into advantage. To fight here within yourself is to begin every other battle already half won. For if you know the landscape of your own mind, its rivers and mountains, its blind curves and high vantage points, you cannot be taken entirely by surprise. And in war, as in life, surprise is the beginning of defeat. Machiavelli warned that fortune favors the armed mind, not the idle dreamer. In The Art of War, he condemned those who trained only when the drums of battle could already be heard, because by then, it was too late. Victory is not forged in the moment of conflict. It is shaped in the long, unseen hours before the first blow is struck. Your daily life may not unfold in armor, but the same principle holds. The challenges that derail you rarely announce themselves with banners. They arrive disguised as an unexpected request when you are already tired, an unforeseen expense when your budget is brittle, or a sudden criticism when your confidence is thin. If you have not prepared in advance, mentally, emotionally, structurally, you will break in the moment you most need to hold. Preparation, in Machiavelli's view, is not a passive gathering of resources. It is an active sharpening of capability. He urged leaders to drill their soldiers even in peacetime, to keep the edge honed, the reflexes alert. For you, this means treating your routines not as dull repetitions, but as the daily training ground for your inner army. The mind grows resilient not by accident, but through deliberate, repeated engagement with challenge. Too many place their trust in, "When the time comes, I'll rise to the occasion." This is a polite illusion. You will not rise to the occasion. You will default to your level of training. What's one daily practice you swear by to keep your mind ready for anything? Drop it below. Someone here needs to read it. If your training is thin, your defense will be brittle. If your training is disciplined, your response will be decisive. Preparation is the great equalizer. It transforms the chaos of the unexpected into ground you have already walked in your mind. Machiavelli also warned against the trap of relying on fortune, on chance, timing, or the goodwill of others. Fortune, in his eyes, was a river, unpredictable, dangerous, sometimes bountiful, sometimes ruinous. To place your fate entirely in her current was to invite destruction. Instead, he urged leaders to build levees, to control what could be controlled. In your life, this means constructing systems, habits, safeguards, and fallback plans that keep you steady when the current surges. Ask yourself, what parts of your life are left to chance? Do you hope your motivation will be high tomorrow? Or have you built the conditions for action regardless of mood? Do you assume your finances will remain stable? Or have you fortified them for storms? Do you wait for inspiration to strike? Or have you cultivated the discipline to work without it? Preparation is not a prison. It is liberation. It frees you from the tyranny of the moment, from being a hostage to every shift in circumstance. The soldier who has rehearsed his maneuvers 100 times enters battle with a calm the untrained will never know. Likewise, the mind trained to meet difficulty with practiced responses moves through adversity without panic. But preparation is also adaptability. Machiavelli knew that no plan survives first contact with reality. The purpose of training was not to lock oneself into rigid patterns, but to develop the confidence and agility to adjust without losing composure. You prepare so that you can adapt, not so that you can cling to a script when the world changes around you. To prepare is to respect both the battle and yourself. It is the act of saying, "I will not meet life unarmed. I will not step onto the field without knowing where my footing is strongest and where I am most likely to fall." This is not paranoia. It is discipline. And in a world that rewards those who act with precision under pressure, discipline is power. Machiavelli would tell you that the army ready before the first trumpet sounds has already claimed half the victory. The same is true for you. The habits you build now, the resilience you cultivate today, these are your weapons. And when the moment of trial arrives, you will not scramble to find them. You will already have them in hand. An undisciplined army is a danger to itself. It can collapse from panic, waste its strength on reckless charges, or crumble into disorder at the first sign of resistance. Machiavelli understood that the true measure of a commander was not in how loudly he could shout orders, but in how effectively he could instill order that held, even when chaos surged. The same is true for the mind. If your thoughts are scattered, if your emotions break rank at the sound of conflict, then no amount of ambition will hold the line. You must become the commander of your own forces, the general who keeps the formation intact when the world closes in. And like any commander, you must earn the respect of the troops you lead. In your case, those troops are your impulses, your habits, your focus, your willpower. Earning that respect means consistency. If a general changes his orders with every rumor, his soldiers will stop listening. If you set goals and abandon them at the first difficulty, your inner forces will no longer rally when called. The mind watches itself. It remembers when you follow through and when you falter. Over time, it learns whether your commands are worth obeying. Machiavelli prized discipline, not because it was rigid, but because it provided a foundation from which to maneuver. A disciplined force can pivot when needed without losing cohesion. Likewise, self-command is not the tyranny of suppressing every feeling. It is the skill of deciding when to listen and when to overrule. You must know when an impulse is useful and when it is sabotage. Consider fear. In battle, fear can sharpen focus or dissolve resolve. The wise commander uses it as a signal to heighten readiness, not as an excuse to retreat. The same applies to you. Fear can be a scout revealing unseen danger, but it should never be allowed to dictate the route. Or take anger, destructive when left unchecked, but powerful when channeled toward decisive action. Commanding the self means recognizing the tactical value in emotions without letting them seize the chain of command. A good general also understands morale. Soldiers who believe in the campaign fight with greater endurance. Your inner morale depends on how you speak to yourself, how you frame your struggles, and whether you see yourself as capable of victory. If your self-talk is constant sabotage, you are poisoning your own ranks. Machiavelli would tell you, a commander who erodes the spirit of his troops has already lost, no matter how many weapons he commands. Then there is adaptability under pressure. Self-command is tested most when plans collapse. Do you lash out, retreat into avoidance, or adapt with clarity? Machiavelli advised leaders to expect betrayal, weather shifts, and sudden reversals, because reality is loyal to no one's script. To lead yourself well, you must anticipate failure without being defined by it. The battlefield of the mind is loud with conflicting voices, one urging you toward the goal, another whispering excuses, a third suggesting compromise. Without command, the loudest or most convenient voice wins. With command, you weigh each counsel and choose with intention, even if that choice is hard. Commanding the self is not about becoming unyielding. It is about becoming unshakable. A reed bends in the wind but does not break. A commander adjusts formation without abandoning the field. You too must learn to respond without surrendering to the moment's chaos. In Machiavelli's world, the most dangerous leader was the one who could remain calm when others broke. In yours, the same is true. If you can hold the line of your own mind, directing your thoughts, steadying your emotions, moving your will into alignment with your purpose, then no external enemy, can fully defeat you. For even if they win the ground beneath your feet, they will not have taken the general in the mirror. Machiavelli understood that not all battles are decided in a single clash. Some wars stretch over seasons, years, even decades, wearing down the unprepared and rewarding those who can endure without losing direction. He wrote of protracted campaigns where supply lines mattered more than single victories, where the army that could hold its position longest was the one still standing when all others had collapsed. Your life is such a campaign. It is not won in moments of glory nor lost in single defeats. It unfolds across years of repeated choices, shifting conditions, and the slow grind of persistence. And yet, most people treat their inner wars as if they were sprints, burning all their energy in a burst of effort, then falling into discouragement when results don't arrive at once. The long war demands a different mindset. In prolonged conflict, the first resource to run dry is not ammunition, but morale. Machiavelli warned that soldiers who believe the war will end quickly are the first to falter when it doesn't. Likewise, if you enter the pursuit of personal mastery expecting quick transformation, you will break when change proves slow. Resilience is built on accepting the pace of reality and on finding ways to keep moving even when progress is invisible. Protracted wars also demand the rotation of forces. A wise commander does not keep the same soldiers at the front indefinitely. He cycles them to preserve their strength. For you, this means pacing yourself, alternating between effort and recovery, knowing that sustained intensity without rest is a strategy of self-destruction. Burnout is simply the collapse of an army that has marched too far without replenishment. Machiavelli also saw the value of defensive positions. In a long war, there are times to advance and times to fortify. You cannot be in perpetual attack mode without overextending. There will be seasons where the wisest move is to consolidate your gains, to reinforce the habits you've built, to deepen the skills you've learned, before striking out again. The impatient commander leaves himself vulnerable. The patient one chooses his moment. The long war tests not just strength, but adaptability over time. Conditions change, fortunes shift, allies become adversaries. What worked at the start may fail later. Machiavelli urged leaders to remain students of the evolving field, not prisoners of their first strategies. For you, this means being willing to abandon methods that no longer serve, even if they once brought success. Stubbornness masquerading as loyalty to a plan is one of the great killers of progress. Defeat, in a long war, is inevitable in some form. Even the most skilled general loses battles. What matters is whether you treat each loss as the end or as part of the larger campaign. Machiavelli counseled that retreats are not failures when they preserve the strength to fight another day. In your life, this might mean stepping back from a goal to rebuild resources, to heal, to rethink. The retreat becomes a maneuver, not a surrender. And perhaps the most critical lesson of the long war is that victory is often unseen. There is no trumpet, no parade. There is only the quiet knowledge that you are still here, still moving, still shaping your path, long after the world expected you to give up. That is the kind of victory fortune cannot easily steal. Machiavelli would remind you that armies disintegrate not because they lack skill, but because they lack staying power. Your task is to keep your inner forces intact across years of weathering, distraction, and change. For in the long war of life, the greatest triumph is not to win once. It is to remain undefeated in spirit across a lifetime. Niccolo Machiavelli's Art of War was not a love letter to conflict. It was a study in survival, in the disciplined shaping of strength. He knew that victory belongs not to the boldest charge, but to the mind that can see the entire field and act with precision. The wars you fight are mostly invisible. They take place in the silence between decisions, in the moment you choose between action and hesitation, in the countless quiet negotiations with yourself. You have terrain to map, troops to command, and a long campaign to endure. And every choice you make is a maneuver in that campaign. To live as your own general is to stop waiting for fortune to grant favorable conditions. It is to prepare when others delay, to adapt when others panic, to advance when the ground is right and to hold when the storm is strongest. It is to see clearly that the first victory is always over yourself. What's the toughest inner battle you've ever fought and won? Tell us how it changed you. Share your story in the comments. Look in the mirror, not as a bystander to your life, but as the commander responsible for its course. The strength you cultivate, the discipline you hold, the patience you protect. These are your weapons. And the field you fight upon is not a place you visit. It is the mind you inhabit every day. Thank you for walking this path with me tonight. Until next time, may you rise each morning with the quiet resolve of a seasoned commander. May your mind be both shield and sword, and may every step you take be a deliberate maneuver toward the life you have chosen to claim.